1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts of books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
Now, when I first started writing this series, the Bridge Chronicles Cyberpunk series, kind of near future thing, when I conceived of the backstory of the RPG in the 90s, one of the catalyst events that I centered this whole thing around was the riots of 2027. When I first wrote it, it was in 94, when I first started thinking about this, and concepting it, and writing the history. And fresh on my mind was the L.A. riots in the 90s after the Rodney King trial. After the cops who beat the ever-living shit out of that guy got off scot-free. And again, that was a situation in L.A. where for decades people have been talking about L.A.'s police brutality problem. And the only reason this became a thing was because people saw it and couldn't turn their eyes away. Somebody videotaped it. Well, so in the back of my mind when I'm writing this, I'm thinking of these riots. So, we had these riots, and I'm thinking of this when I'm writing this, but I hadn't really crystallized, what steps happened. Just that there were riots because of food shortages and the like, because of a budget crisis in Washington. And it wasn't until later, until I started writing the Bridge Chronicles, that I felt like I needed to, not spice it up a little bit, but at least talk a little bit more about it, explain what happened. Well, lo and behold, what I came up with, and this was around 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, is the catalyst for the riots in L.A., at least, and in other places, but in L.A. in 2027, was the murder of 5 unarmed black teenagers at a Korean grocery store when there was a dispute between the owner and the black youth, called the Jackson 5. And, there's a little bit of a play on the Jackson 5, the band. The catalyst was the murder of black teenagers by police. It's really terrible to think that middle-class white suburban kid from Mississippi could picture riots of this scale and magnitude, or, protests of this scale and magnitude, coming because of the murder of black teens. But, look back over the last decade. How could you be surprised by it? That's the thing that gets me, is how is it our state, local, federal governments can't see this happening, can't expect this to happen. You can't keep kicking people without expecting them to kick back. You can't keep trying to push people down and put your knee on their neck and not expect them to fight back eventually. No matter what your authority is, no matter what the law is, you can only push people so far before they break and bad shit happens. Law enforcement in this country has been pushing the black community over and over and over again in so many places, in so many ways. And the only reason white America hasn't tipped to it yet is they haven't seen it until we started getting cell phones where everybody has a camera. Suddenly it's everywhere. Well, it's not suddenly. It's always been everywhere. You just haven't seen it. Or you have known about it and you've just ignored it. You've just been like, meh, doesn't matter. Why is it the law and order politicians, what they mean when they say law and order is tough on crime? which again means harsher sentences, more policing, harsher policing, zero tolerance policies, 3 strikes and you're out. I'm all for putting people under the jail when they do some seriously egregious shit. But it's got to be fair. The punishment not only has to fit the crime, but you have to administer that punishment in a fair and just manner, following the Constitution, which says everybody is innocent until proven guilty. Cops running out there on the streets murdering black men is not innocent until proven guilty. I think for far too long, there's been this attitude that for policing, that it's them against us, or them against the world. That they're out there and, they're constantly in danger. And they are. Don't get me wrong. Being a policeman is a tough-ass job. Being a good policeman is an even tougher job. And in many cities where people are all together, and, places like New York and Los Angeles, where there's economic issues and there's all these people just crammed together, shit's going to go down, shit's going to go bad, and it's going to be tough. But you know what? If you didn't think policing would be tough, you probably shouldn't have been a policeman. It has to be hard, because it's a hard job. But you have to be harder than the job. If you're going to go out there and be given the right, the state-sponsored right, to take someone's life, and again, that's supposed to only be in issues of self-defense, or at the very least, confine someone, remove their freedom, and have to violently restrict their movement in order to get them in a car or whatever. If you're going to be given that responsibility, by damn, you're going to be given the responsibility to do it with some accountability. That means you fuck up and kill somebody, you got to be responsible for it. Criminal charges can't just be, oh, well, he's a cop, we can't indict him. Or he's a cop, we trust the police implicitly. We can't have that anymore. You cannot be trusted implicitly. And the reason I know you can't be trusted is because every time I see one of these protests where somebody who's standing there with their hands up gets beamed in the head by a rubber bullet or gets tear gassed, that's not being responsible. Tear gas is a chemical irritant. And here's the thing that infuriates me the most. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a good chance all of these protests are going to be super spreader events. That people are going to be spreading it. And normally I would be like, okay, then get the fuck back home. This is a special case. This is something that's necessary. But how dare you fire tear gas into the crowds of these people? Because not only could you hurt someone someone with asthma who can't breathe now because of the tear gas, not only that, but you're making these people cough and cry, both of which are things that can spread coronavirus more than just standing around talking. So you are exacerbating the potential for these to be super spreader events, endangering not just the protesters, but the police who are supposedly there to calm things down, keep things calm. You're endangering yourself. And that's not right, especially when you're talking about places that are not breaking shit. They're not rioting. They're not looting. They're not attacking police. Maybe verbally. At this point, the police are firing tear gas, and them certainly deserve to be verbally assaulted. You're making it worse. And the funniest, in a very black comedy sort of way, part of all this, all these police responses that we're seeing online, all these videos of police just attacking, peaceful protesters, you're proving their point. All you had to do was nothing. Literally nothing. Don't fuck with the protesters. Let them go. Let them yell and scream at you. All to their heart's content. Let them peter it out. Let them just peter out. And the protests would have been over days ago, more than likely. I mean, there would still be protests because, again, this is something that is very important. But the large-scale protests, you're making them worse. You're making more people come out by proving the point. So, of course, one of the justifications we've seen for, or one of the excuses, more like, we've seen for things like Derek Chauvin killing George Floyd is that it's just a few bad apples in the police. It's just a few bad apples. That's over and over. We've seen that. And, of course, there's been, Chris Rock has a really good little joke about that from a few years back that's been going around online lately. But that few bad apples thing is missing the whole point of that phrase, which is a few bad apples spoil the bunch. Meaning if you don't take the bad apples out, eventually all the apples are bad. So let's take this George Floyd incident, let's break it down just for a little bit. Derek Chauvin stands on his, kneels on his neck for 9 minutes while he says, "I can't breathe," while 3 other officers, who thankfully have now been charged with aiding and abetting a murder, stand there and watch. Bad enough. That's bad enough. What makes it worse is that all 3 of those officers that stood and watched were like days on the job. They were all rookie trainees. I don't think any of them had more than a year. I'm not even sure many of them had more than a month of actual on-the-job experience. And Derek Chauvin was their training officer. That bad apple spoiled a bunch of 3. Because what he's training those officers for, and who knows how many other officers he's trained this way, was to say, we are always right, we don't need to have any accountability, and we can do whatever the fuck we want to whoever we want, because this is our town, and we're police. Few bad apples spoil the bunch. That line of Buffalo cops that knocked that 75-year-old man to the ground, had him hit his head, bleeding, and I'm not even sure if the guy's conscious now. You see the guy that knocks him over, the 2 people that knock him over, one of them sort of kind of reflexively shows some humanity by starting to reach down, and then realizes, if he reaches down to help the man, he's recognized that he's done wrong, and his buddy in the line is saying, no, don't do that. Don't act like you were wrong. All 57 of those cops saw that happen, were there, and didn't stop it. Didn't go over and help that man. Rather, just went ahead and let's start cracking some skulls. Few bad apples spoiled that bunch. So now that whole bunch, can you say they're good cops? If it was your granddad laying on the sidewalk bleeding, possibly concussed, or having a hemorrhage, hematoma, aneurysm, I forget what it's called, but possibly dying for that, would you say that those were good cops? Because none of them helped him? New York City police officers in SUVs running down protesters in the SUVs, running them over. If I'm not mistaken, we charged a guy with murder for doing that in Charlottesville a few years ago. One of those very fine people who are white supremacist Nazis. So why is it different? What's the difference? It's because they got a badge? Badge doesn't give you the right to kill like that, just indiscriminately. Especially not when the protesters you're running over aren't doing anything but protesting. They're not attacking anybody. They're not breaking shit. Seattle and Portland, I think it was Seattle, has fired so much tear gas at its protesters that they ran out of tear gas. Think about that for a second. You fired so much tear gas on your own citizens that you ran out of fucking tear gas. Don't you think that's a little overboard? Seattle's not burning. These people aren't killing anybody. These people aren't hurting anyone. Stop it. That's not policing. That is not serving and protecting. In no way, shape, or form is it. Minnesota police, Minneapolis police, slashing tires on people's cars. Why? They don't have the right to do that. And there's multiple videos there. This is not just an isolated incident. Minneapolis PD driving by lines of protesters on the side of the road, just holding up signs, doing nothing, pepper spray out the window, and then driving by. Why? What are you doing? Finally, I can't. I'm going to finish this video talking about something that, talking about specific people, politicians mostly. And in this case, unfortunately, it's Republicans. I am not one to paint with a large brush, or I try not to. I try not to paint an entire political party, entire faction with a large brush. Because let me just say here, I vote Democrat because I don't have another choice, but I am not a happy fan of the Democratic Party. But the reason I vote Democrat is because the only other choice is no choice at all. Not for what I believe. The Republican Party, in particular, Donald Trump, who is president right now, has completely and utterly abdicated any justification for saying that they are the law and order party. Now, they're going to try. What they really mean is the dog whistle. When President Trump comes out and says, I want to be a law and order president, what he really means is, I want my police to crack down and crack skulls on black, brown, immigrant, Native American, not white people, so that they know their place. That's the dog whistle, and that's what's being said. Now, you may not believe that. You may not think that's right. You may think I'm over-exaggerating that. I'm not. And the reason I can tell you I'm not is because look at the actions. President Trump cowered in his bunker on, not this past Friday night, but the Friday night before. Cowered in his bunker because there were protesters outside who were pretty damn pissed off. And it was getting a little wild out there. I don't discount that. It was getting a little wild. But it was being exacerbated by the police who are out there pushing, cracking skulls, throwing tear gas and pepper spray and rubber bullets at people. So President Deals goes down and cowers in his bunker over the weekend, tweeting from the toilet, rage tweeting. And, sets curfew, 7 o'clock in Washington, Monday night. 6:30 Monday night, 30 minutes before the curfew, he rolls in cops and National Guard who fire flashbang grenades, tear gas, pepper spray, all sorts of bullshit at protesters to push them away, to make this big, empty zone. So the president can dump truck his way over to St. John's and get photographed with a Bible as a clear dog whistle to evangelical Christians, like, hey, I got a Bible. You ain't even read the Bible, man. Come on. I read the Bible more than you. And you 30 years older than me. Don't bullshit me. I know you. You ain't going to church. Only reason you've been in church more than I have in the last 4 years is because you've had to for some functions. Me? I ain't been in church. It's a wonder that Bible didn't blow up in your hands. But to gas your own citizens, and make no mistake, tear gas may not kill you, but you're gassing your citizens so you can walk across the street and say you're dominating the battle space and have your big military parade, and they're not doing anything. And then you keep ratcheting up because the cordon around the White House has now gotten to be fences and concrete barriers, and now we've got lines of guys in SWAT gear, riot gear with the shields and the helmets and all that, who have no insignias on their uniforms, so we don't know where they are. They're not wearing name tags. And they're guarding this little demilitarized zone around Trump's, bunker so he can feel safe and feel like a big boy. Which doesn't seem legal to me. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but if I ask a policeman for his badge number, I'm pretty sure he has to give it to me. And to not say, hey, I'm with the police, how are you going to say that you have authority if you won't even, show me what authority backs you up?